U.S. Chamber of Commerce became a very, very important player in the tort reform movement, and they have now been shown to be funneling money into judicial campaigns.
Here's the way campaigns happen, okay? You have your doctors, hospitals, manufacturers, insurance companies. You got all those folks kind of quarterbacked by the Chamber of Commerce. That's where the money is. There's nobody on the other side except the trial lawyers, because the trial lawyers know the law and know what's going to happen if these judges are elected.
We were playing by a certain set of rules. There were campaign finance laws that you had to know where the money was coming from, and there were limits on some of the amounts of money by who gave it.
The trial lawyers are limited to how much money they can put in. If you give more than $5,000, a judge can't sit on their case. Whereas if the money comes from the chamber, all that money was packaged into a large group, and there's no way that you can see who were contributors.
The chamber puts in millions of dollars into state races through some kind of a front group. You know, Citizens for a Strong Ohio or Partnership for Ohio. Groups that sound like they're citizens groups, but in fact are really business groups hiding behind a false veneer.
We're doing much, much better in the courts and in the election of judges to the state Supreme Courts. We're in those races. We'll spend $19 million in the election of those judges and state attorneys general in this next election.
They spent so much money against us. They would run almost every 15 to 20 minutes on TV on our local station. So we got to where we just didn't have the TVs on, and all of a sudden one morning...
We didn't want the kids to see these horrible ads.
Some of the ads actually had big money bags being thrown up on a bench that he was bought and paid for.
His generous friends. Diaz's campaign took over $100,000 from personal injury lawyers.
And so one morning we hear, just woohoo, and our daughter's just like cheering downstairs, and we come down, and she's like, we're rich. And she'd seen the ad with the big bags of money, on the bench and her daddy's name.
The game plan was to pick out a justice, try to make that justice look soft on crime, take snippets from decisions that the justice had made, manipulate those decisions to make them seem absolutely outrageous and ridiculous, and spend a lot of money to get that message out to the voters. The amount of money that's spent on television in a political campaign has an enormous effect on the outcome. And in fact, in 2000, the statistics showed that the side that spent the most money won about 90% of the time.
We had 2 weeks until we had to run again for a runoff, and we find out that the U.S. Chamber had literally almost purchased all of the available airtime that there was available from Jackson to Biloxi, Mississippi.
And what we had to do at the time was actually take out loans to finance the campaign. And if you're familiar with banking at all, they generally don't like to loan money to folks who may lose an election. So you have to have somebody with money that co-signs on your behalf. And my very good friend Paul Miner was willing to step up and sign a loan at the bank to allow us to compete with the U.S. Chamber's ads that were running at the time.
Keith Sterritt's special interest group from Washington, D.C. recently started attacking me and distorting my record. I refuse to be negative, but I must defend my record.
I still don't know how we did it to this very day, but we actually won that election. I really honestly thought when we won and celebrated that election, we had thought that was a good day, and it turned out to be probably one of the worst days of our life, the election was.
Federal prosecutors decided to investigate me and used the loans that Paul Miner had co-signed at the bank and called that a bribe and said that he bribed me as a judge. But what's really interesting about that is I never voted for a single case in which Paul Miner or his law firm or anybody he was associated with had brought before the Supreme Court because of our friendship.
And then that summer, Oliver was indicted. And it just kind of started spiraling downhill from there. I almost kind of didn't believe Oliver. I said, there has to be something here. You're not telling me the truth. They wouldn't bring these charges against us and do this. All of these counts are facing 100 and some years in the federal penitentiary. We have
millions of dollars
in fines. We have 2 small children.
Oliver Diaz says the charges against him are groundless because he withdrew from all cases involving Paul Minor. Diaz is on leave from the Supreme Court until the case is resolved.
The decision to prosecute Justice Diaz may have been motivated by tort reform politics. It may have been motivated by an effort to remove Justice Diaz from the Supreme Court, where he often voted for ordinary citizens and against corporations. But it certainly was not a prosecution that was based on the evidence, because the evidence did not support it.
Do you think that Oliver was prosecuted for political reasons?
Sure. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
We thought we were just targeted and this was just us and this political prosecution was just us. We have later found out that this happened all over the country, and those other judges that won or were successful were also targeted.
After a 3-month trial, I was completely acquitted of all charges. Jury returned not guilty verdicts on everything. But 3 days after my trial, I was re-indicted on tax evasion charges. So I had to go through another federal trial after that first 3-month trial, and had a week-long trial this time on tax charges. And after a 15-minute deliberation time by the jury, I was fully acquitted a second time. And I was finally cleared to return to the bench, but not after I had been removed from the bench for almost 3 years. So what they weren't able to do through an election, they were able to do with a federal prosecution, federal investigation, to keep me off the bench, to ruin my reputation, to make it that I probably wouldn't be able to be elected again to the Mississippi Supreme Court.
Some other people were elected who were considered to be much more business-friendly justices than had served on the court in the years past, and it really did alter things.
In Mississippi, after the court swung, they went like 2 years without upholding a plaintiff verdict. You know, you might be able to win with the jury, but you have no hope of having that verdict sustained by the courts.
I think sort of the taint of these charges and sort of the residue of all of that, and the fact that some people in the public simply assumed he was guilty because he was charged of it, caused him to be defeated for re-election.
Also, I was not able to raise the funds to compete. I raised about a quarter of the amount that I'd raised in my first election.
If $2 or $3 million is being spent, or $10 million is being spent, this way it's going now, in 10 years from now, they'll be spending $100 million on judicial elections. And it's not really a good way to have the system work. And there's many people in the business community who don't agree with me on that.
To receive the Leadership Achievement Award.
Oh, for what?
For passing a 208-page civil justice reform law in Oklahoma that is going to take the bullseye off the back of business in our state.
What does that mean exactly?
It means that we're protecting our businesses from frivolous lawsuits.
And do you think there are a lot of frivolous lawsuits?
There are, and we think that there's a definite cost to the medical profession and the cost of doing business, where we have to protect that companies that are now doing business in our country from that kind of invasiveness.
And so who brings these frivolous lawsuits?
All kinds of people. People that are jackpot justice oriented.
Do you think tort reform is a good thing for the American public?
Without a doubt.
Why is that?